From being so broke that he had to sleep on park benches to a legend like Dwayne vouching for his insane skills and talent, here's all about the rise of Jimmy Butler revealed. You see, throughout most of his childhood, his life wasn't so great, and when it came to having a cozy family, Butler wasn't that blessed. A while back, Chad Ford, while reporting for ESPN, asked Jimmy a bit about his early life. It turns out that the basketball star's mom wasn't his biggest fan, and kicked him out of the house when he was just 13. Apparently, all she said was that she didn't like the look of him. Not gonna lie, that's just downright cruel. Anyway, fast forward a couple of years, Butler spent most of his time couch surfing. The only problem was, he was a bit of a troublemaker and could never stick around for too long. Eventually, he made a few friends in high school. One of them had a pretty chill mom and dad who decided they'd take Jimmy into their family and accept him as one of their own, on two conditions. All he had to do was help out around the house and get his grades up. That might have been the best thing that could have happened to this dude, because now he finally had someplace to come back to. It wasn't long after that Jimmy began to develop some pretty sick basketball skills. This is where his story truly begins. At first, Butler didn't look like he'd have much of a future in basketball. That's because he wasn't drawing any attention to himself. None of the major schools wanted him to attend, and he was forced to join Tyler Junior College just to get by. A lot of people said that this was because he never got the chance to play AAU. I guess we'll never know what the real reason was. Anyway, fast forward a while, and Jimmy started catching the eyes of many college scouts. This was thanks to his insane performances on the court, with several amazing performances ending with him dropping 30 or 40 points on the scoreboard. Soon enough, the offers started piling up. And thankfully, he had the Lamberts help him pick a college that was the best fit for him. Eventually, his foster dad, Michael Lambert, convinced him to join Marquette because of its academic prospects. But still, things didn't get any easier for him. Once he reached Marquette, his coach drove him so hard he almost quit the sport several times. Eventually, after hours on hours of grueling training, Butler began to show just how good he was. He went from averaging just 5 points per game all the way up to 19 points per game. This was a huge improvement, and everybody knew that a storm was coming. This dude was the real deal, and he was the hardest worker on the team. Despite the steep learning curve he'd faced when he first arrived, Jimmy knew that the only way out of here was through determination and will. Eventually, it came time for the NBA draft, though the Heat players saw right away that he was in for a wild ride. At first, Butler wasn't even sure he'd get drafted. After hours of suspense, he got drafted as the 30th pick of the first round by the Chicago Bulls. The team already had a ton of mouths to feed, so adding another youngster to the squad, well, that wasn't the best decision by the management. Still, Jimmy caught on pretty quick and figured that he'd have to work twice as hard in order to prove himself to his teammates. He was already pretty awesome at defense, he just had to get his points game up. While he wasn't that awesome in his first 3 seasons with the Bulls, he exploded in his 4th year in the NBA. The kid was averaging 20 points per game and started driving his opponents crazy. He was one of the most skilled players on the court, and it didn't look like anyone could stop him, or even remotely get in his way. The NBA soon realized how awesome he was and started throwing a few awards his way. He ended up winning the Most Improved Player award along with making his first All-Star team. In short, he proved why he was one of the most dependable players in the NBA and deserved every bit of the success he seemed to be getting. Still, his success was pretty short-lived, as he became a free agent more than once over the next few years. You'd think at this point, Jimmy would be pretty set with the Bulls. However, he famously turned down a $44 million contract extension and ended up signing a 5-year deal worth $95 million in the offseason. Even that didn't last too long, as the power forward was traded to the Timberwolves. He managed to stick around with Minnesota for 2 years before getting into a dispute with the management and getting traded to the Philly 76ers. It was here that he began to cement himself into the squad and showed everybody why he was such an amazing player. Then he made headlines immediately after arriving for challenging the head coach during a meeting. While the whole setup seemed to be working out well for Butler, the 76ers didn't make the playoffs, and Butler hit free agency. It was at this point that most people began to think that his career was pretty much over, but there was still a silver lining. The Miami Heat decided to throw him a bone, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions they could have made. This was, in every sense of the word, a match made in heaven. From the day he was signed to date, he's been absolutely phenomenal. And so we've reached the climax. It seems like Butler set himself up pretty well in Miami. He's fitting in well with his teammates, and he has a pretty nice relationship with his coaches. Since Wade decided to retire, it's been on Butler to lead the team to success, and lately he's been doing a pretty good job of it. In fact, after their recent win against the Lakers, Dwayne Wade himself came up to the Miami management and told them that Jimmy was the ideal leader they'd been looking for all this time. No one expected Butler to pull off the performance he did. When the Heat needed him most, he managed to come through in the best way possible. I mean, the man dropped an insane 40 points and legit carried his team through the game. If I'm being honest, Miami wouldn't even have made it this far if it hadn't been for Jimmy coming in clutch. It's like I said before, the Heat and Butler are a match made in heaven. His temperament as a player, coupled with the way Miami deals with its players, it just flows perfectly together. Sure, he's had a rough journey to get where he is today, but it's pretty obvious that whatever he did, it managed to work out in the end. He's made it in every sense of the word. This brings us to the final question of the video, which is, what does the future hold for a Miami superstar? He's managed to make it this far, and it's all thanks to his insane work ethic and all the hard work he puts in to make sure his team dominates on the court. If you've got Wade vouching for you, you know you're doing something right. You don't get a legend like Dwayne telling people you're the S without having done some epic stuff on the court. As things stand right now, Butler is going to need to hustle even more and beat LeBron's Lakers. It's not going to be easy, though. At this point, it's clear that Butler has proven to the world that he's a world-class player and doesn't need to work for anybody's approval any longer. He's been made an all-star, won the Most Improved Player award. He's managed to accomplish a lot throughout his career, more than most people expected him to. When he got the contract from the Heat, he was 31 at the time. Everybody thought Miami was insane to offer him a contract this late, but I have to say, he's managed to get the job done better than most. All that remains is to see how far he can carry the Heat on his back. Of course, there are plenty of other players who carry their weight on the team, but no one can hold a candle to Butler and his skills on the court. Plus, he seems to be happy with the team, and the team seems to be content with having him on their roster. While nobody knows what'll end up happening as the season goes on, we know one thing for sure, and that's the fact that Butler is a world-class player, and the Heat are lucky to have someone like him on their team. It's truly a match made in heaven. Anyway, here's hoping that the rest of the season goes well for them. So, from a legend like Dwayne vouching for his insane skills and talent, to making out of a rough childhood sleeping on park benches, that was all about the rise of Jimmy Butler.